Phil Hartman, who rose to fame on Saturday Night Live, was found shot to death today inside his home in Southern California.
Over the course of 3 decades, The Simpsons has been airing across the globe to millions upon millions of fans. And of course, with such a long history, there are bound to be a couple criminal cases revolving around the cartoon characters in real life. The Simpsons is perhaps one of the most important television shows of all time. Starting its life as a collection of shorts on The Tracey Ullman Show before moving on to its own series in 1989, Matt Groening's creation has become a staple of American pop culture that persists even to this very day. And with such a long legacy, it should not come as a surprise that a few tragic and horrific events have occurred over the years related to the town of Springfield. Phil Hartman was a comedic actor with a prolific career across the 80s and 90s. From helping Paul Reubens in developing the character Pee Wee Herman to featuring in such shows as Saturday Night Live and News Radio, his effortless charisma made him a beloved figure of the comedy world during that era. It was around this time that he was hired by The Simpsons, voicing 2 recurring characters, the incompetent lawyer Lionel Hutz and the washed-up actor Troy McClure, who you might remember from such films as P is for Psycho and The President's Neck is Missing. Both of these roles were favorites amongst Simpson fans, and Hartman quickly became a staple of the show's cast. But while his professional career was booming, Phil's personal life was rocky to say the least. Across the 70s and 80s, he was married 3 separate times. His longest lasting relationship came when he tied the knot with Bryn Omdahl in 1987, who took the actor's last name upon becoming his wife. According to his previous spouses, Hartman's outgoing public image was the complete opposite of the man he was behind closed doors. When the cameras weren't around, he would become incredibly quiet, reserved, and emotionally closed off, which put an immense strain on all of his romantic relationships. From an outside perspective, though, Phil's latest marriage seemed more successful than his previous attempts. While his past wives divorced the comedian after just 2 or 3 years, he and Bryn appeared to be in it for the long haul, even siring 2 children together. But those close with the couple knew that they were facing a great deal of trouble. What must be understood is that Bryn's dream from the very beginning was to become an actress. While she landed a few roles, her biggest success instead came from her modeling. According to friends, this made the aspiring performer incredibly jealous of her husband's career. Hartman did make efforts to leverage his popularity in order to get more opportunities for his wife. She appeared alongside him sitting at a booth during his introduction for Saturday Night Live's opening credits. However, her back was kept to the camera for the entire shot. She allegedly made multiple attempts to show her face on screen, but the director insisted she turn away every time, making her incredibly frustrated. Bryn's envy reportedly manifested itself in a number of destructive ways. Following the birth of the couple's first child, Phil's second wife Lisa Strain sent them a letter of congratulations. What she received in response was described as 4 pages of the most hideous vitriol you could imagine. Strain soon called her ex-husband in order to inform him of what his wife had written. His reply only was, "You should have seen the letter she wanted to send." Everyone who knew her called Bryn incredibly anxious and insecure. She received frequent cosmetic surgery in order to make her appear like a more traditional Hollywood star. As stated by the family's nanny, her husband also had a hand in encouraging some of these operations, allegedly wanting her face to be quote-unquote less round. As if all this weren't bad enough, Bryn also struggled with addictions to both alcohol and cocaine. She was plagued with these vices even as far back as when she first moved to Hollywood, and had previously been committed to rehab. It seemed to many that her stay in the facility had done the trick, as she managed to remain sober for nearly a decade afterward. But the stress compounded as the years went on, not helped by the strain of her marriage, causing the model to experience multiple relapses. During some of these episodes, Phil opted to remove the children from their home until his wife was able to clean up her act again. It goes without saying that Phil and Bryn Hartman had a rocky marriage. While the couple's dysfunction was apparently an open secret amongst their friends and colleagues, they were still adamant to make the relationship work. Hartman had allegedly been saving up money in order to fund an early retirement so his wife would no longer have to feel like she was living in the shadow. While some friends expressed concern, Phil seemed determined to give up his acting career if it meant making Bryn happy. And perhaps it could have worked, if not for the tragic events which would soon follow. On the evening of May 27, 1998, Bryn went to the Italian chain restaurant Buca di Beppo to have drinks with SNL writer Christine Zander. By all accounts, the woman seemed to be in a happy and stable state of mind, laughing and joking with her friend for hours. As she left for the night, she reportedly said, "I'll be sure to bring Phil next time." When she returned home, though, that friendly demeanor vanished. While it's unclear what exactly happened that night, it has been claimed that the couple engaged in an incredibly heated argument, not helped by the fact that Bryn was reportedly back to using drugs at the time. When the fight was over, Phil angrily went to bed. His wife, on the other hand, was not finished just yet. At 3 in the morning, she grabbed a gun and silently entered the bedroom. She then pulled the trigger and shot Hartman multiple times, killing him where he laid. In a state of shock and panic, Bryn immediately drove to the home of their friend Ron Douglas and confessed to her crime. But he did not believe her story, thinking that she was simply babbling nonsense in her drug-addled state of mind. The duo soon drove back to the Hartman residence, where Douglas saw the horrifying truth with his own eyes. The man quickly took the children outside and called 911, while Bryn locked herself in the bedroom with her deceased husband. When police arrived on the scene at 6:15 a.m., they cautiously approached the bedroom door. But as they did so, they heard one final gunshot echo from within. They were too late. When they managed to get into the room, they found Bryn Hartman dead from a self-inflicted wound. All of Hollywood was left reeling in the days following this tragic event, and fingers began to be pointed in every direction as people looked for someone to blame. Phil's news radio co-star Jon Lovitz was furious with another actor from the show, Andy Dick, who he believed had been responsible for Bryn's latest relapse. While he did admit to using drugs with the late Mrs. Hartman, Dick outright denied the allegation that his influence caused her to commit murder. "I didn't cause her to relapse, and I didn't give her cocaine and then she ran off, got a gun, and shot her husband and herself. No, that happened 6 months later." Bryn's brother, Greg Omdahl, had a different scapegoat in mind. At the time of her death, the aspiring actress had been taking the anti-anxiety medication Zoloft. Greg argued that the manufacturer, Pfizer, had heavily downplayed the potentially violent side effects of their pill in their marketing, and filed a lawsuit against the company. This suit would later be settled out of court for $100,000, with Pfizer admitting no wrongdoing. As for Phil and Bryn's children, they were raised by their aunt and uncle, and now lead relatively quiet lives. After his passing, the producers of The Simpsons opted to retire Hartman's characters rather than trying to recast them. Troy McClure and Lionel Hutz remain beloved fixtures of Springfield to this very day, despite not appearing on television for over 2 decades. In fact, many Simpsons fans mark the death of Phil Hartman as the exact point when the show's quality began to decline. But while Bryn Hartman may be the most well-known criminal associated with the famous Yellow family, she is certainly not the only one. Stephen Mertens was an official for the UK's Conservative Party. The man's life took a dramatic turn when, in 1990, he was arrested on suspicion of assaulting a 9-year-old girl in a pedo manner. But somehow, as he was awaiting trial, Mertens was able to outwit police and flee from their watchful eye, avoiding prosecution for over a decade. In 2003, authorities in the UK managed to trace a credit card to Redfield, Bristol, which was being used to access a CP website. Through this, they were able to apprehend a suspect, a man by the name of Richard Dirk Villan. But upon fingerprint analysis, they realized this was not his true name. Rather, it was the fake identity being used by Stephen Mertens. After ages of running from his punishment, the offender was finally able to stand trial for his crimes, being sentenced to 10 years behind bars in 2004. Once he was released, Mertens was banned from using computers and being alone with anyone under the age of 16. As well as being on the sex offenders registry for the rest of his life. The convicted felon was required to check in with his local police once per year in order to renew his place on the registry. While he did this dutifully for quite a while, in 2019 he suddenly failed to comply with the court order. What followed was another 2 years of Mertens constantly moving around the country in order to avoid being located by authorities. When they finally caught up with him, he was asked to surrender his phone and its password. To this, the unregistered sex offender reportedly simply stated, "Go away." After a lengthy and frustrating back and forth, officers were finally given access to the device. On it, they discovered multiple photoshopped images of underage Simpsons characters performing lewd acts on one another. Police suspected that the years of running had given Mertens ample opportunity to delete any other far more illegal photos he may have had in his possession, and was left only with yellow Rule 34 art. This was enough for them to arrest him once again on August 12th, 2021. In November, he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. While Mertens was clearly a fan of The Simpsons, others who have worked on the show have also been involved in crimes. Robert Glass was an audio engineer working in Hollywood across the mid-70s and into the early 90s. By all accounts, he was a prolific and well-respected member of his field, even winning the Academy Award for Best Sound in 1983 for his work on E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Among his many credits across film and television, Glass provided his talents to The Simpsons, working as a re-recording mixer during its lauded 4th season. Unfortunately, he would not be able to provide any more of his talents to Matt Groening's show. Merely a year later, on July 21st, 1993, a friend became concerned and called 911 when he was unable to get in contact with the audio engineer for an extended period of time. When police arrived at Glass's apartment, they found him stabbed to death on the floor. While there was no sign of forced entry, the home was completely ransacked, and the victim's car was nowhere to be found. While this evidence seems to point toward a robbery gone awry, all these years later, the murder of Robert Glass remains unsolved. Going back across the pond in the UK though, police would be using The Simpsons as inspiration for actually apprehending offenders. It was December of 2017, and the officers of the South Yorkshire Police Department were busily looking over their Christmas list. Or rather, they were looking over the suspects on their most wanted list, trying to figure out a way to cross multiple names off it all at once. That's when they came up with the idea for Operation Holly. The scheme was simple enough. The police mailed out flyers to every single person of interest they could find, informing them that they had won holiday baskets filled with wine and treats. To receive their prize, they simply had to arrange a time in which they would be home in order to accept the delivery. It's safe to assume that these lucky winners did not end up getting the gifts they were expecting. Over the course of just 2 days, over 21 people were arrested by the South Yorkshire Police after being fooled by Operation Holly. The charges of these suspects ranged from drinking and driving, burglary, assault, and more. And the courts made short work of these cases, offering up fines and prison times to many of those arrested the day they were brought in. All of this was enough for authorities to consider the plan a success. A few keen-eyed Simpsons fans noticed many similarities between Operation Holly and a scene from the Season 9 episode, Lisa the Skeptic. The moment in question involves Chief Wiggum luring criminals to the Springfield police station with the promise of a free motorboat. It should be noted that nobody in the South Yorkshire Police confirmed that this strategy had been inspired by the bumbling cartoon officer, but outsiders noted the connection regardless. And this would not be the only scene from the animated Fox series with an association to real-world crime. Season 7, Episode 12 of The Simpsons, titled Team Homer, tells the story of the family's patriarch entering a bowling competition with a group of his friends. While they dominate their opponents at first, they begin to fall behind once they are forced to add the elderly and decrepit Mr. Burns to their team. Homer's disappointment at this turn of events results in a scene of him lamenting the fact that he prematurely built a trophy case to celebrate what he assumed would be his upcoming win. The camera then pans over to reveal this case, with only one award placed upon it, an Oscar with the name Dr. Hang S. Noor hastily crossed out and Homer Simpson written in its place. Hang S. Noor was a gynecologist living in Cambodia during 1975, when Pol Pot and his Khmer Rouge party took control of the country. Due to the new regime's hatred of educated people, he was forced to lay low for many years before later moving to America in 1980. It was here that he was approached to act in the film The Killing Fields, which told the story of the Khmer Rouge's rise. Despite the fact that he had no prior acting experience, the filmmakers felt that Nor's life story would make him an invaluable member of the cast. Nor won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his work in 1985, and continued acting for the rest of his life, using his fame to speak out and educate people about what happened in his homeland. Tragically though, his career would be cut short when, on February 25th, 1996, the doctor was shot to death outside his Los Angeles home. While the courts ultimately ruled it was a robbery gone wrong, with 3 members of the Oriental Lazy Boys gang being found guilty, theories still persist that it was actually a hit carried out by supporters of the Cambodian dictator. Another important detail to note is the timing of this murder. As previously stated, Hang S. Nor died on February 25th, merely a month after Team Homer first aired. Suddenly, this once harmless joke took on a much darker context, making it seem as if Homer had killed the Cambodian refugee in order to steal his Oscar. It should go without saying that this seemed to be in poor taste to many audiences at the time. Thinking fast, the network decided to edit the scene upon future re-releases of the episode. If one were to go to Disney Plus and watch Team Homer today, they would find the name replaced with Don Amici, another Best Supporting Actor winner who had already passed away several years before the episode came out, mitigating any concerns that he too could be murdered. So there you have some real-world crimes revolving around The Simpsons. And with the show showing no signs of stopping anytime soon, there are bound to be more. And with that, I think I'll end the video here. So until next time, thanks for watching.